Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to our webinar, Tigo. We are very happy to have Tigo as part of our opening 2 weeks. We have a big celebration of our new sales office here in Brisbane. And before we start with the presentation, I would love to give a quick introduction. We do the questions at the end, so please keep it, and at the end we will have a good discussion about it. Yeah, Rutledge. We are global distributor of PV. Oops, sorry, that was too much. We are global distributor of PV systems. So basically everything you need for your PV system, so for your solar system, it starts with panel, the mounting system, inverters, down to storage systems and e-mobility, which is really a rising trend. So everything you need, we got you covered. Please contact us. We've got everything on stock available. A few facts about Rutledge. We are nowadays 500 employees, actually growing day by day. We are represented in 25 countries with 25 offices. We have more than 5,000 items on stock, which means really a wide portfolio with all the big brands you need. So we've got also alternatives if a product is not available. So yeah, check our web shop. You will find quite a lot. We have about a bit more than 9,000 customers worldwide, which we serve day by day, and we process per year 82,000 orders, which means we really have a good understanding of the market, what are the trends, what are the requirements, and that's very important to be really close to our customers. The celebration of those 2 weeks, we have a new sales office in Brisbane. In addition, with our Melbourne sales office and the 5 warehouses across Australia, we really have a good footprint in the market, and we are here since nearly 10 years soon. 2012 it started, and the company itself is more than 25 years old, so we have a lot of experience to offer. Here on the right hand side you see our latest warehouse, our little sales office, plus a showroom we have, so whenever you have a demand, a question, please come in. We also have a great program for those 2 weeks. This week, that's the last one for this week. Next week, we will have really great stuff about batteries, about inverters, off-grid systems. So a lot of stuff. Please sign up and join our webinars, and then you go into our raffle and you can win great prizes. We have inverters to give away, 6.6 kilowatt systems. Tigo have a great prize, LG TV, like a lot of stuff. So just attend and you will go into the raffle. So now I would like to hand over to Tigo. I just make you the presenter, Gary, and then you can go through your presentation. I'm looking forward.
Right. Okie dokie. I think I can share a look at that. So hopefully you can see my screen now, can you?
Yes, all good.
Can you see it? We all good? I'm not getting any feedback yet. Just wave at me if you can see my screen okay.
Yes, we can.
Oh, great. Okay, great. Okay, so I'll start the presentation now. Yeah, I would like just to thank Mark for the opportunity to address a product with you today. And I would say that having been out to the warehouse now, it's a fantastic warehouse. This new location is ideal. Great opportunity to drop many containers into their car park. Plenty of parking space, have a great showroom. It's a really well laid out warehouse and well managed. I've been in many of them over the years, and this is one of the best I've seen. We've been now dealing with Rutledge since the very early days, so we're very, very happy to support them. They're a long-term provider into the market in many countries, and that gives a certain level of satisfaction and protection, I would think, for most of you guys that are dealing with them on a regular basis. You know, they're not going to disappear. So that's just a little bit of a thumbs up for Rutledge. And so I'm just going to start this presentation now. And I would say at the end of this, we can have a bit of a chat. And there would also be a PDF version available for you. You just need to ask Mark and he'll email it to you. So here we go.
Thanks for joining today's presentation from Tigo. We're going to have a look at a couple of solutions for rapid shutdown for safety on site with our TIS4AF device and our TIS4AO optimizer and TIS4AS safety device. So just before we proceed, that's I hope you can see my cursor here on the left. That's me. And any questions arising from today's presentation, please just drop me a line, gary.willett@tigoenergy.com. And I'm sure many of you would already know Jeff Rutledge, who's been with the company for many years now. He's our Senior Director of APAC Sales and Business Development. And you can certainly have a chat to him if you need to. But just before we proceed, just a quick word about this particular slide. It's an 11 megawatt floating solar project. It's one in which our rapid shutdown solution was added. Obviously, electricity and water don't mix terribly well, and the plant owner was particularly concerned that they needed to have some protection in place, and our product was selected to be adopted onto that site. So just a little bit about Tigo. We were founded in 2007 in America, and to date we've deployed somewhere in the order of 4 million devices now globally across all 7 continents. And each day we manage around 1 gigawatt hours worth of PV production through our monitoring portal. And that gives us a really good insight into what's actually occurring within modules on roofs. And we can use some of that data, and you'll see that presented in some other presentations that I'll produce as we go forward. I would mention that we've got an agnostic approach. So that basically means that our products will work with any current available PV module in the market, and we're also certified to work with over 2,000 different types of inverter models now. So we actually have a very good relationship with inverter manufacturers, and some of our product is actually incorporated within inverters in some markets. And we'll talk a little bit more about Tigo Enhance as we go through the presentation. But basically it means that in the event that a business owner or a home owner has to replace, well, let's just say an inverter down the track, and their current brand's no longer available, that they can just purchase whatever they currently can find that suits their property, and our products will continue to work seamlessly as they had previously. And certainly we're seeing now in some large-scale plants, module sizing has changed, and that's caused some issues for some plant owners. But again, we can assist in helping that situation as well. So it's more having a chat to us about that. So this slide's probably a little bit old now. It's certainly by the end of 2020, I think in Australia we deployed 3 gigawatts. And as we can see, the upward trend is fantastic. That means a lot of Australians are adopting solar systems. And certainly, you know, it says down here, 1 in 5 homes now have a solar system on the roof. So I think it would be fair to say that it would be hardly anybody could travel down a street now anywhere in Australia and not see 1 or 2 or even more solar systems on roofs as we drive through. But what we don't do is really consider the safety aspect of the system on the roof with high voltage DC. And that's what we're going to be having a look at a little bit today. Now, unfortunately, we live in a continent in Australia, which is probably one of the harshest environments to live in. And this year, El Nino is back. So 2021, we've got, La Nina to deal with. And that's causing some concern with the authorities. And we're being asked to prepare and get ready for events that may occur. And certainly, if we look at 2019-20 reporting period, it was just under 6,000 homes that were destroyed by bushfires. Absolutely incredible. And unfortunately, 34 people lost their lives during those events. It's really quite sad. And then some states, in particular West Australia, Northern Territory, Queensland, always go through the cyclone season. I think this year we've been relatively lucky, but of course that can bring high winds and flying debris. And I think most states have had some form of flooding from time to time, and we certainly need to be aware of our protective role in making sure our property is electrically safe in those events. And then just recently we've had in Queensland a massive hailstorm event where the hail was as big as cricket balls, and many homes that had holes punched through the roof. And I saw many images of damage to PV systems. And in fact, it's interesting because the smashed PV modules probably protected the roof to a degree from penetration. So they were an added benefit, I guess, in that respect. But what it meant, there were many numbers of SES exposed to high voltage DC as a consequence. So all those events just previously mentioned do present safety challenges for PV systems and PV systems owners. As we said before, bushfires, nobody really wants to be standing in the street hosing down a home trying to protect it from fire in the event that the PV system on the roof is active and live and there's a risk of electrocution to the firefighter. That would be a terrible event. And of course, as I mentioned before, with cyclones, we have flying debris and high winds. And just even with high winds, we'll see cables flapping around underneath the modules, and that can cause damage to the cables, can cause damage to the connectors. And that's just without any debris falling on the roof, tree branches or neighbours' property flying through the air. But all that can have an impact on the safety of this PV system on the roof that we really need to be thinking about. And of course, any damage that's caused to a module through flying debris can open it up to water ingress, and that can cause an arc fault. And we've seen pictures of people sitting on their roofs waiting to be rescued by boats coming past. And many of those are metal roofs, and I certainly wouldn't want to be sitting up there if my PV system was active and live. It would just be too risky. So we certainly need to think about how we might isolate them. And as I mentioned before, hail's an issue. It's not just the fact of having a module smashed by hail, but just consider the impact on the glass through hail. And I've been through 2 here now, hailstorms, and I've certainly noticed I've got cracking in my cells, micro cracking occurring through impact damage from hail. And I'm just monitoring that now through my Tigo monitoring portal just to see the effect of loss of PV production. And there'll come a time, I think, that I'll need to put a claim in and get those replaced. But without reporting, you really don't have any visibility on what's occurring. And the other thing I'd mention too, if you get a bit of an impact on the frame, just a slight dent will maybe just open up enough of a window there for water intrusion into the module, and over time that can cause arc faults and possibly a fire. So we really do need to have some investigation over our PV system after an event, and that would be with a licensed electrician calling on a property and doing an inspection. I would suggest would be a really good thing to do, but also through keeping a really good eye on the Tigo monitoring portal for any events which may have occurred. And of course, in some instances, our system will deactivate the rooftop and isolate it if the condition was too severe. Now, just some common root causes of issues with high voltage, as we've mentioned. Damage caused by impact and water ingress is probably the biggest problem. And as we know with rooftop isolators now, we're starting to see problems occurring with those. I've certainly got one now that's warped through sun exposure, and that can certainly open up a gateway for water to find its way into the isolator, and it can cause me some problems down the track. But as mentioned here, there are many causes of issues with modules that can cause possible electrocution problems or faults within the module that can cause fire that we need to be concerned of. And I'm sure you've seen this picture before with the MC4 connector. This particular one, as I recall, was resting on a metal roof in leaf debris, which had built up underneath the modules, and it was an arc and caused a fire, which wasn't very good for the homeowner. And I've actually seen fires caused by DC isolators on roofs smouldering away, and it's quite frightening for the homeowner to see that happen. So how can we assist with that particular situation? So I just want to address the two potential products that you might like to think about. And the first being TS4 AF product and the TS4A 2F product. They're both from one family and they provide shutdown to the module level. And this particular image here shows that the modules will be shut down to 0.6 of a volt, or each device will be 0.6 of a volt, which is a non-lethal voltage. In the event that there's a loss of AC to the property, so the minute the AC is switched off, the stay alive command is broken, and the modules are then reduced to 0.6 of a volt. So that's probably the most cost-effective solution for somebody looking to maybe replace or augment rooftop isolators. I'll have a little bit more of a closer look at that particular product category in the next few slides. But in addition to that, we also have our TS4AO and TS4AS, and they provide PV off. This is PV off is fully safe, down to 0 volts. And we'll talk about how that's achieved again in the next few slides. So I just want to have a bit of a chat about the US market, and as you're probably aware, 5033 is under review currently here. We took a slightly different tack to the Americans who I think it was in 2012, they had an electrical code which was a requirement, and that's been pretty much mandated now and updated in 2020. And that required, I'm just going to move the bouncing head there, that required that the voltage to the inverter had to drop to 30 volts within 30 seconds. It's quite a robust code, and it was put in place to protect first responders. And here we elected to use DC isolators. And in hindsight, that was probably a fairly logical, inexpensive way of protecting firefighters who attend a roof and a little bit concerned about it being electrocuted. But as we know, that's tended to have caused a few more problems than they were originally expected to do. I think there's been quite a few fires and other events that have occurred. And I guess if I just asked all of you, how many, put your hand up, how many would like to see them gone, removed completely? I think that would be a fairly universal mandate or feeling across all installers. We don't really want them anymore. And 5033, I would suggest, is going to address rooftop isolators in one form or another. We're yet to see the draft. It was due out in 2020, late 2020. We're now in 2021. But the new inverter regs have just been released for review, and I would expect 5033 will be released sometime soon, and we'll be able to get more clarity. But I guess it's important to start to think about what we might be doing moving forward in the event that rooftop isolators are either eliminated or there's a grace period to transition to something else. And we've certainly had a solution available now in many markets for a number of years. Two solutions as we're going to cover today, and one of those is a very low-cost alternative to rooftop isolators. And as I mentioned before, this American system's now been rolled out in other countries, and I'm sure our regulators here have been looking at how well it's worked in some of those other jurisdictions, and it may form part of the code here. And they're probably also looking at what's been occurring in Europe and how they manage it over there as well. We may have a hybrid of between the two, I guess, yet to be determined. So having a rapid shutdown solution provides a couple of things which are really important. And one of those is to automatically render the PV system absolutely safe within the defined period of time. And that can occur automatically in the event that there's a loss of AC or a command is issued to shut down the PV modules, and it can be dependent upon which system you actually select with Tigo. Or it can be isolated manually, and that's a very important consideration in the homeowner or the business owner managing their own property before they might evacuate or leave the property, or they have any concerns about weather impacting their home and or their property, and then we do just make it safe for people in the area. And as we mentioned, yeah, it does overcome many problems that we may have with rooftop isolators. Certainly deploying just for AS 100% will take care of any voltage issues that would occur that could cause a problem. It would just shut the system down to 0 volts. And as I mentioned, it can be part of a procedure, and really homeowners or business owners should have a set procedure. Just turning off the inverter doesn't turn off the DC coming out of the modules. So, you know, in the event that you do have to evacuate and leave the property, you're going to go through a process. You might turn off the electricity to the property, the AC, and you might turn off your inverter if you think about it. And then you might also press the plunger switch that's on the wall to shut down the DC coming out of the modules. And as I mentioned before, also with the AC being switched off with our particular system, that can also shut down the DC to the from the rooftop PV. And that's a great thing. If you're leaving, you're evacuating, you can leave knowing that you've left your home or your business in an absolutely electrically safe condition. And anybody attending your property to try and save it or help it in any way won't be subjected to high voltage high voltage electricity. We really need to start to think about our home the way we would about a downed power line, and how we might protect somebody from that. And we have a great responsibility to ensure that our homes are safe for anybody attending our property, or in the event that there's a lot of activity going on outside with flying debris. We just don't want to have live high voltage on the roof, so we need to turn it off. And we can do that, as I mentioned, by pressing the plunger switch manually or shutting down the AC to the property. So let's just have a look at the two families. I like to call them families. Just move the floating head again out of the way. So the first one that we're going to have a look at is the Tiers 4 AS, and this provides rapid shutdown, this particular product, attached to each module by these little clips, which we'll have a look at in a minute, but provides rapid shutdown and also provides monitoring. So we have clear visibility over what's happening to our module. Each and every single one of them is monitored, and that information is available then on our monitoring portal. In the event that there's an issue, you will be supplied, or the homeowner or the installer or business owner will be supplied with a text or an email to say, hey, there's a problem, we need to go and address it. And just recently I had an email. I have some building occurring at my premises, and the builders did something to my system which caused it to go offline. So I wrote an email very quickly, then went round and spoke to them, and we were able to address that very promptly. And I would also say that, well, going back a few months ago now, but I had an inverter fail, and so I got an email to say, hey, your inverter's not working. So that was really good, because I was able within a very short space of time to contact the inverter manufacturers, who supplied really quickly a replacement, and that was fitted within, I think, within a week. So I was back up and running again. But had I not had that email, the likelihood of me picking up I had an inverter problem could have been quite a long time. Because I'm in the trade, I do, when I go, I've got my inverters in the garage, so when I go and get into my car, I do look across just to make sure the lights are on. But most people, I would think, probably don't do that. And it could be that they wait until they get their next electricity bill, and then some of them will go, well, gee, my bill's gone up, I wonder what's happened, and do some investigation. And others may not even do that. And then they've got a dead inverter. I actually have a friend that's in that category. She bought a home, and I went to visit her, and the inverter was just not working. In fact, it was on the outside wall, and the screen was so frosty you couldn't even read anything, but it was dead. But she'd never noticed any difference in electricity bill. She never worried about it. So it's really good to have some sort of monitoring system active. And in the event that there is a problem, you can just go and get it sorted. And I'd also say that, while we're here on this page, that anybody that's had a warranty claim, with modules or inverter for that matter, it's a lot easier if you've got all the data at your fingertips to be able to say, look, this is my problem. It certainly helps the module manufacturer or the inverter manufacturer sort out where the problem might be occurring, if there is or isn't one. So, you know, in my mind, monitoring is a really great thing to have. And as I said, you get the advantage of having rapid shutdown and PV off by deploying TS4AS and all modules. Now you can also, if you wished, you could deploy TS4AO, and that provides everything that was mentioned in this previous product, but it also provides optimization. So optimization will take care of things like module level mismatch. And we're seeing quite a lot of that occurring now. And that can occur straight out of the box, and it can get worse over time. And we're seeing things like leaf litter on roofs or bird droppings. I've certainly had to go up and clean back droppings off my modules. They're very hard to get off, actually. Shade issues caused by cloud cover, even coming over, and drift in cell performance over time. So, you know, all these things add up to lost power production, which we don't want. And the TS4AO can help mitigate that to a large degree. And I will show you later in some of the slides from my property where that's certainly been a bonus for me. And the other great thing is that you can actually mix and match these two products together. So I'm sure a lot of you have been deploying TS4AO selectively on properties which have got some sort of obvious shade problem, whether it be from a neighbour's tree or through a stink pipe or an air conditioning vent on a commercial building, sort of casting shade. But maybe we can start to think about the added benefits when you fully deploy. And again, here you certainly get the added benefit of PV off, and of course you get full advantage of having monitoring as well. And as I mentioned, you can deploy these two categories together on the one roof. It has to be 100% deployment. But you know, if you had a let's say commercial roof, which is generally considered you know, one azimuth, nice and flat, and you've only got a few modules that might be affected by an air conditioning duct, you might elect just to deploy the TS4AO in that particular area, and the rest of them you would deploy the TS4AS. But that would give the business owner full rapid shutdown across the whole site, and they would have shade mitigation taken care of through the TS4AO. Personally, I'd advocate the use of TS4AO on all modules on a commercial environment because generally they're concerned about maximising their production. And as we know, we get dust build up on commercial sites because they're generally flat, and that causes a loss of PV production, and it needs to be assisted in one way or another, and the TS4AO does a really good job of that. Plus other benefits of bird droppings and so on. They might want to have their systems cleaned very regularly, so we certainly need to find a way of overcoming that. And the other great thing with the monitoring is actually, I had a client just brought to my mind, a commercial client that put some modules on their roof. It was 1.4 megawatt install, as I recall, and they didn't want to use tilt frames because of the cost, so they elected to lay flat. And in a very short space of time, they realised they were losing 10+% production through dust. So they then had to engage a cleaning process, somebody to get on the roof and clean it. Now, that was an additional cost, and it was quite a high cost actually. Had they had monitoring attached, at least just monitoring attached to their system, they would have had clear indication of their power loss over time, and they could make a bit more of an informed decision about when they would have their modules cleaned. So it might have meant that the gap between cleaning would have got a little bit longer. But as it was, they were doing it, I think, monthly. So that was quite an impost for them. Anyway, the other family that we'll talk about today is this family down the bottom. Again, I hope you can see my cursor running over that, but we're going to have a look at the TS4F and the TS4-2F product, and as it says here, for fire safety. And certainly these particular devices, when attached to the modules 100%, can achieve absolute fire safety. They shut the modules down to 0.64 volt in a very, very cost-effective way. And I would just mention that with both of those product categories, they just get clipped onto the module, and there's no grounding needed at all. So there's no grounding wire or connectors required. It's a floating system. And as I mentioned, it's plug and play straight out of the box, so it's very easy to deploy very fast. We have very high reliability, the highest reliability I would suggest of any of the providers in this category in the market. Very low failure rate. And if you were to run a heat gun over the front of the module, you wouldn't pick up any sign of there being heat generated behind the module. It's very, very low heat dissipation. In fact, our TS4AO and TS4AS sit passively until they're required, so they're not actually doing a lot of work unless they're required. So that means that we don't have any thermal issues at the module level as a result of deploying our particular devices. So this is the TS4AS. As we mentioned, it's for rapid shutdown for safety. And the device is actually only 22.9 mil thick, so it will fit behind the back of most modules today. It just clips to the frame with these spring clips. A little bit of a knack to clip them on, but it's quite easy. And in the event that you've got some module you might be using glass to glass or something up there that doesn't have a frame, you can just pop them off. And you can see here you've got a little hole that you can bolt into the racking if you need to. So there's no way that you would be able to use those in all situations. And as I mentioned, they're so thin that they fit just neatly behind the back of the module. So when you're on site and you're unloading the van, you can just stack your modules like you normally would and not have any concerns about crushing them, putting one on top of the other. So we deploy TS4AS for monitoring. It detects any connector issues, over voltage, short circuits, and poor performance, and you will be notified of that through remote diagnostics through our monitoring portal. And when they're attached to each of the modules actually, the devices here actually communicate via our mesh Wi-Fi system. So providing they're within 10 meters of one another, that information is passed from one module to another. And I'll show you some slides. I think I've got some slides further on about how that works. So for safety, we get automatic shutdown in the event that there's an anomaly detected that can be considered to be harmful or dangerous. It will just shut down. It will shut that particular module down to 0 volts, and if it needs to, it will shut the string down to 0 volts. And if required, it can shut the whole system down to 0 volts. And that can be done automatically, as I said, and it can also be achieved if you've also deployed a manual switch. So in the event that you need to leave, you just press the plunger switch in or flick the switch, and you can shut that down to 0 volts. And as I said, we use original MC4 connectors on all of our products, so they should marry up to everything that you're deploying, providing you've got certified modules within the Australian scheme of things here. So the TS4AO provides everything that we get out of TS4AS, but as I mentioned, it also gives the added benefit of having optimization, taking into consideration model level mismatch. And I'm just going to move my bouncing head again, if I can. Trouble with my cursor. It doesn't want to work. But we're using predictive IV technology. It's a software-based solution into the optimized device. So it's actually looking at the historical performance of the module's IV curve and then making some adjustments to accommodate what it thinks it will need to do to assist the current coming out of that module. And at this point, I should say that this particular product, the TS4AO, being deployed on all modules, is there to support the inverter MPPT. It doesn't override it, it's there to support it and to give a nice steady current to the inverter. So the inverter MPPT is not searching up and down too much and inducing bypass diode infliction off and on, and therefore recalibrating consistently. So that means a longer life for the, I would suggest, for the inverter, a better life for the inverter, and may even assist the lifespan of the module concerned. There are some module brands that will not honour warranty if their modules are deployed in areas where there's a lot of shade, because they know that the diodes are being flipped on and off on a regular basis, and if you lose one or two of those, you're losing a bit of production, and they actually won't cover the warranty in those situations. So you just need to have a chat to your module supplier about that. So a couple of things just to notice with this TS4AO product is that you always deploy within the specifications on the spec sheet, and currently maximum power of the module will be 500 watts. And I would think, well, at this point in time, we're in early 2020, that we're well within most of the modules being installed now. And then I think we're probably up to in the early 400s now wattage. It's quite an incredible growth. My module's 175 watts, so we've had a rapid increase in size over time. Not only wattage, but also in physical size. Some of them are quite large now, certainly for commercial jobs. But yeah, certainly 500 watts is the current level maximum that you can use, and not to exceed 90 volts, and the maximum current of 12 amps. So that should come into your calculations when you're doing a design. And I would think, as we move through 2021, this 500 might shift upwards, but we'll see where we go, maybe by Q3 or Q4. So let's just have a look at what might occur and how it works on the roof. So here we've got 7 modules all in a nice string, all on a single azimuth, producing nice beautiful current. That's all being passed through to the inverter. It's all being collected and moved on to the inverter. So the inverter is selecting the best MPP point that it can for that particular string, given the weather conditions and so forth. However, if we have a bit of a problem with shade on this particular slide here, we've got the 4th module now being affected by considerable shade, and we can see here now what happens is that affects the current flow, and we're certainly getting a lot less to the inverter than we would expect to have. It's like all things, it always works at the weakest link, whether that be a cell that's not performing properly, or a module. In this case, this particular module has been bypassed, or part of it's been bypassed. So we're not getting an optimized solution there. But yeah, so by deploying TS4 AOs on these particular modules here, what will happen is that these first 4 will generate the current, and that will get passed through to the inverter and added to 2 on the end. And then this particular module here will be allowed to collect whatever it can generate, and that will be added into the overall production pass forward. So we're reclaiming power here that would be normally bypassed through the diodes being induced, completely bypassed. So now we're actually able to recover some power, and that could be that particular module is only being bypassed for a short period of time as the sun arcs through the horizon. That shade issue might shift from one module to another, or it might be that you've got some cloud cover that's coming over that's affecting some modules and not others. So that can be quite a dynamic. So what we say is we open up a dynamic bypass tunnel. So it can be, the size of it varies depending on the need. It's quite a sophisticated algorithm that we use in our devices, but nevertheless, it gives you the best return. And that could be quantified by having got our smart module, which we will do a little bit later on. I will show you that. So let's just have a look at it. Architecture might be deployed on the roof. So this is a good example here of a TS4AO being deployed on each module, and you can see here that they're connected to the terminals on the J boxes. And then over in the corner here, we've got what we call our TAP, a Tigo access point. Now that would normally be deployed in the center of the array. And this red line here is indicating that there is a cable, 485 cable, running off to, can actually move me, there we go, running off to the Cloud Connect device, which is situated somewhere near the inverter. And as I mentioned before, some inverter brands can actually have this particular component built into their inverter. But I would probably think that most of you will be deploying that as a separate item. It comes in a IP rated box, which we'll have a look at shortly. But so in a domestic situation, you might have a single tap connected, and all these modules have got the TS4AO attached to them, or TS4AS, or a combination of both, and they're all communicating to the tap, and that tap then has a communication line down to the Cloud Connect device, and the Cloud Connect device is then talking wirelessly to the World Wide Web. And this is the Cloud Connect device in its IP rated box, which is the way you can buy that. It comes with its 12-volt power supply, and that would get mounted on the wall somewhere close to where the inverter is. As I said, that provides the control for module level deactivation, the rapid shutdown, and also provides connectivity for monitoring back to our cloud portal. And there are a couple of other things that can occur with this particular product. There's a bit more of a close-up photo of it. And you can see here we've got an auxiliary port. So if you wanted to, you could connect a building management system to it. And that could issue a command to shut down the rooftop solar system if it needed to. So you don't need to buy any additional product. That's all part of this particular device here. And if you wanted to, you could connect CT meters or an irradiance meter or a revenue meter to the device too, if you wanted to. So it's quite flexible. Uses Modbus. Quite a little package with quite a lot built into it. And I would also just mention that in the event that there is a disconnect from the internet, it does store the module data for a period of time, and then when there's reconnection, it will update that back to the monitoring portal. So they really have thought through the process quite well, I think. Yes, so the Tigo monitoring portal is fantastic. I think it's probably the best one available that I've seen, and it provides quite a lot of information. We actually display data in 1 minute intervals on our free platform that comes when you buy the system. Providing you have 100% deployment, or certainly with TS4AO, providing that they're all connected on a number of modules. You might not have them on all modules, but certainly that group of modules that the TS4AO is connected to, or the TS4AS is connected to, you're able to receive monitoring. If you wish to have rapid shutdown for the whole plant, though, you would need to have 100% deployment. But yeah, certainly we capture data in 1 minute intervals. And for a small upgrade to premium, you can have capture at 2-second intervals. So if you really need to step through and look where a fault might be occurring, you can really go back into granular data, and at 2-second intervals, you can certainly find out what's occurring. I've had a look at a number of sites now, and I really enjoy the benefit of being able to click through in 1 minute intervals. Certainly in 15-minute blocks, it's just not enough clarity over what might be occurring. If you had an edge effect, for instance, and there's been a boost and then a decline in voltage, you really might find that only occurs over a couple of minutes, and you could miss that in the 15-minute data. So being able to go back and really click through in 1 minute steps has been really fantastic. And the other thing is that, as it says here, reclaimed energy by Tigo, we're the only provider that provides that data for customers. And I certainly look at my reclaimed data, and we'll have a look at that shortly. So it is displayed in the monitoring portal by these little green boxes at the top of the daily production. And so we're able to see how much power has actually been reclaimed that would have been lost through bypass diodes being reflected. And this particular customer here, his site, he's actually added some CT meters, so he can actually look at where his consumption's going in his house as well. So it's another benefit. So once the system's actually set up on the portal, which is easy to do, it's a matter of selecting what alert subscriptions the client or the installer might wish to receive. And it's just a matter of saying, do you want them as an email or an SMS? And you just click those. And as I said, I received one not long ago because my Cloud Connect was disconnected from the net by the courtesy of the builders. So I got mine by email. I sit most of the day connected to the computer, so it's a better way for me to receive it. And this is just an image of my site. And what I'd always suggest to anybody putting or creating a site on our web portal, take a photograph of the actual layout and use that as the backdrop. It's just so much easier when you're going in having a look, or if there is an issue and you call one of our engineers, it makes it really simple for them. They can go and have a look and they can kind of see where the layout is. It's very important that you make sure that when you do the mapping, you take the ID of the device that you're attaching to a module and you make sure you map it to that particular module. So when we look at it electrically, we want to look at B4 as an example. We want to know that the data that we're reading for B4 is actually coming from B4. So spend a little bit of time. It's not a lot of time that you need to do it correctly, but it certainly will help down the track. And what I can do here, you can see the timestamp along the bottom here is 10:35 a.m. That particular photo was taken, or screenshot. But what I can do is I can grab that sun and I can scroll it through the horizon here, and it will change the time down the bottom, and I can see exactly what my production is. And we can see it's been quite choppy, so I've obviously had quite a bit of cloud issue coming through on that particular day. And then just by clicking the button here, I can step through in 1 minute increments as well. And then down the sidebar here, I have a number of options where I can click to select different reporting information. And so it's quite easy to use. And this is the electrical view, and as you can see, I've got two inverters running at my house. One A bank off one inverter and B bank off the other inverter. And I would just mention this little bar here. This is quite interesting because I adopted the Tigo monitoring system on my, or optimization system on my roof in 2014. So I've had it there for quite some time now. And I've got the old original optimizers, the old grey ones, on each of my module. But, I don't know, a while back now, I had a problem with one that was intermittently going offline. So we replaced it with the current version of TS4A-AO. And that little bar just indicates to me that that's got a TS4A optimizer on it. It's good to know when you're looking at the checking what somebody's got on their roof. And as I said, it's very easy to set up a system. Once you've actually done it the first time, you can go back in and just add a new system under your login credentials. So it makes it very quick to do. And then just a little bit more about the reclaimed energy. This is my particular daily production. And it says here for that particular day, I reclaimed 1.3 hours worth of kilowatt hours worth of power that I would have lost had I not had the system on my roof. That works out to be about 42 kilowatt hours worth of power a month. And at the current rate of my export recovery, it's about $409 a year that I'm better off that I would have lost had I not had a Tigo system working on my roof to mitigate my power losses. So I'm very, very happy. I'm a happy Tigo customer. And at the end of the month, I get a little email, it comes every month. You know, when I first put it on, I was checking it nearly every day. I guess most customers will when they first get it on, they'll be having a look to see what their system's doing. But after a while, you kind of get to the point where you think, oh, well, it's working now. And what I do at the end of every month, I get my little report here, and I just divide that by the number of days. And I know my system is still making, it's about 8 kilowatt hours during winter and about 12 in summer, sometimes a bit more. And that's what I kind of expect to get out of my system. So even at this late stage in its life cycle, it's still producing what I expect it to have. And every month I get a little gold star, which shows me which of the particular modules for that month has been the best producing module. And it's usually number 18 or even 19 sometimes, or 20. That well, these three are the ones that seem to work the most for some reason. Not sure why really, but anyway, they do. So let's look at the other option, which would be the most cost-effective solution, I would suggest, for people looking to adopt rapid shutdown onto their property, and probably is a good alternative or an adjunct to using a DC isolator, and that's this TS4A F, and this particular image here is showing the TS4A2F. They're like a brother and sister, and we'll have a look at the differences between the two. So the TS4A2F is a 2-for-1 solution, we can see here. So that attaches to one module, but it actually provides protection for two modules. And that's a great way of reducing the cost. You save about half the cost of buying another one of these and doing it that way. So it's, as I said, it's a really good cost-effective solution. We should just note that using that particular product, it allows you to connect two maximum 500 watt modules together, so 1,000 watts all up. And I would again say that as we move through this year, that number will increase later on as we go down the track. So currently we're all okay, everybody's fine. We're not generally deploying anything other than anything higher than 500 watts. But something just to keep in mind as we move through, and maybe late this year, early next year, we might start to see some higher wattage modules coming on the market, and by then we will certainly add a device that can cope with that. And everything that we do is backward compatible. So from an inventory point of view, I don't know, let's just say this was 700 watts. You could have some in the array that were 500 and some that were 700 working together, providing you didn't exceed the minimum wattage. That would be fine. So if you had to go back and I don't know, let's say in 2 years' time, a customer bought some additional modules, and you needed to attach some TS4A2Fs or TS4Fs onto those modules, and this was, let's say it was 700 watts, and the previous ones were at 500 watts, it would be fine. It would all work. You wouldn't have any problems. But again, just make sure that you have a look at that before you do any installation, and that you don't breach any of the levels that we've got here. 15 amps on these particular products as the maximum, and 90 volts is the maximum too. And again, I just say we use original MC4 connector, so you're quite aware of that. So this is how the TS4A2F would be connected to a module. You just clip it on the corner of the frame, and then the connections are as shown here. So again, it's a lower cost solution in terms of hardware. It uses 16% fewer connections required, and it saves you a bulk of time, particularly if you're doing a commercial job where you would have a lot of them to deploy. And it's built to scale, so you can deploy 6 or you can deploy hundreds of them. And it doesn't really matter. There's no limitations in that respect. So let's just have a look how that might get connected again here. This is a good example. So this is an example of the TS4A2F being connected, plugged onto the module, and then two modules connected to the device. And then the home run is taken down to this Rss transmitter. That's what it looks like. And the Rss transmitter has a CT coil attached to it. Now, in some markets, particularly in America, they have what they call an integrated Rss transmitter. So our inverter partners have actually integrated this particular device into their inverter. So we call that Tigo Enhanced. You might see that in paperwork. But what it means is that for the installer, it's dead easy. You just buy the inverter that you're using. This is already part of it. You just run the home runs through the coil, and everything's honky-dory. But in the Australian market, we haven't got that in place yet. I guess it needs to be some code changes to accommodate that through 5033, and maybe the inverter regs need to be adjusted slightly to accommodate it. But anyway, that would be supplied in an IP rated box and would be attached to the wall somewhere close to the inverter. And as I said, you take the home runs through the CT coil. And this is an example of the IP rated box I just mentioned with an Rss transmitter there. Now this has got 2 CT coils on there. So why would we have 2? Well, in the case of a large commercial deployment, you may need to have a second CT coil to run the home runs through. But they all need to be all plus or all negative running through the same coil. Now, in the event that you've got one of these and you're using it for a domestic installation, you would just undo the screws there and take the extra CT coil out, put it in the van and keep it for later. The cost of buying this particular product with a single coil or with a dual coil is a couple of cups of coffee. It's minimal. So if you were looking at a one-stop solution, really to make it easy for storage and inventory control, you just buy the one with the 2 CT coils on it, and then just take the one coil out you're not using. And then we're almost at the end now, but this is another really, really handy device. It's a one-off purchase that you would make. So let's just assume you've deployed now all the TS4A-Fs and A2Fs, and you just walk along now to each module before you leave, and this little Rss Signal Detector will beep and flash a light to tell you that that's connected correctly and that it's working. You would not want to be walking off a job where that's not the case, because if there was an event that occurred that caused a fire and these weren't working correctly, somebody's going to be held accountable to that. So I recommend that every one of you that's deploying these particular products buy one of these devices. It's only one-off purchase, and you just keep that in the van, but it will save your bacon possibly down the track. Now, the other thing I'd mention, just to be aware of, that the loop length needs to be 300 meters or less. Now, certainly for a domestic install, that's not going to be an issue, but maybe on a really large commercial deployment, you might find that you exceed that length, and that's okay. You can do that, but you just need to talk to us first before you do it, so we can give you some advice on what you need to do. But just keep that in the back of your mind. 300 for most installs. If you're going to go over, you need to have a chat to one of the Tigo people first. Now, just to kind of finish off a little bit here, just to quickly run through TS4AO and TS4S from one family, and they provide rapid shutdown. Both of them provide that. Module level monitoring is provided with both of those, but also optimization coming from the TS4AO. They both connect via our CCA and TAP, and they need to be 100% deployed if you want a rapid shutdown. And you can deploy a combination of both if you wish to go down that way. And on the other side, we've got the low-cost entry-level option, which is just providing rapid shutdown to 0.6 volt, and it's paired with our Rss transmitter. So no communication to the World Wide Web through our monitoring portal. Just purely, do I have a problem? Do I need to shut down? Yes, I do. This is how I do it. So just in conclusion, we really should be talking to our clients now about system safety and introducing that conversation fairly early on in the piece, particularly based on some of those issues that I identified at the beginning of the talk with weather conditions. I would certainly suggest that all commercial businesses have an eye across fire safety. There's been some big fires in some commercial sites now, and that can destroy somebody's business. So they really have, they need to understand how they can mitigate that on their premises, and they can certainly do it easily by deploying our product. And then I guess anybody that's had anything to do with bad weather in one way or another, or a fire in a rural area, certainly should be thinking about their role and what they need to do before they leave their premises, or if their premises is under attack from cyclones, for example, they really need to think about how they turn that light you see off their roof. So that conversation should be handled at the very early stage of sale, and maybe even now with people that have got just rooftop isolators, or have had this hailstorm event that's just gone through, any of you visiting customers to replace PV system, maybe you can suggest that they deploy just for AF while you're up there as an adjunct to the rooftop isolator. And you might find that backward compatibility is fine. But certainly anybody that's already got a system installed, there's nothing to stop you going back and lifting up those modules and just clipping the devices on and giving them the safety of mind that they might need. So look, this is the Sku Sheet. So if you're looking at what you might need to purchase from the distributors, your favorite distributor, please just have a look at this, and that might help you through the ordering process. Now, I'm just going to mention our website's just gone through a bit of an upgrade. It's still in development, but it's a fantastic site. It's got a lot of information, and certainly please go and have a look and have a bit of a dig through. There's a couple of links here. tigoenergy.com/products is one really good place. For technical info, you can go to support.tigoenergy.com. If you've got any questions about warranty or anything like that, you just go to that site and log a request in there. And we also have a site where you can go and do a design as well for your tap placement. If you've got a large commercial job and you just want to make sure that you've done it correctly, you can go on, and one of our engineers will have a look at that, give you a bit of support needed. So yeah, so please just take note of these addresses here, but do go and have a look anyway. It's a great resource for you, and it's all stuff you can download to give to clients if you need to. So just to conclude, safer homes use safer solar, and certainly today safer homes are using Tigo. So thanks for being part of the presentation, and look, we've recorded a few others and we'll add some more over time, and I certainly hope that over time we'll be building a knowledge base. So I look forward to talking to you again soon. So yeah, thanks very much.
Thank you so much, Gary. That was a great presentation and good content, very valuable content. I would now like to open the round for some questions. You can unmute yourself, you can use the chat and we read it. Please, any questions?
I think it's usually the way. I've been
no problem.
Sat there and thought, what do I need to ask?
Yeah, we probably have to digest the amount of content first, but I mean, let me ask one or two questions. You mentioned already, you said warranty. What is the warranty on those Tigo products?
Yeah, so the devices themselves are covered by a 25-year warranty, so that matches the module warranties. The CCA would be, I think, 5 years from memory, but there is a warranty document that is available through our website, which details all the terms and conditions of warranty. But I have to say, since joining Jeff now and having been involved in the industry for a number of years, I think I've processed 1 warranty claim, 2 maybe, since the time I've been there. So we very rarely have any issues at all. And most of the problems occur really with guys not connecting the systems properly. But yeah, the product warranty is very, very small, so very reliable.
Okay. The other question I noted down, the TS4 Tigo products, they are very easy to install. It's kind of a plug and play. Regarding the monitoring platform, did I understand you right? You have to sign up, you have to register, and then you get a profile, and then you have to add all your system components?
Yeah, so generally speaking, I'd say to the guys, download the Tigo app onto your mobile, and when you're in the office, just create your profile. You only do that once in the system, and then when you go to site, the optimizers have a little barcode on that you scan, and then you can create a design layout. So it's just drag and drop. You have a picture of a module and you just position them on the platform, and then you assign that barcode to that particular module. So you probably need half an hour to do all of that, I would think. And then when it's connected to the internet, it'll do what we call discovery. So it connects to our portal, and the portal then talks to all the optimizers, make sure they're all turned on and that they're all performing as they should do. So the installer gets a really good view before they leave the premises that they've connected everything up the way they should do and they haven't made a mistake anywhere. And if they have, they can go back and rectify that. So yeah, once it's up and running, it'll indicate that it's all been done, and then you can start monitoring the actual performance of the module. So it gives the installer really good visibility over the production of that particular site. So if you're actually selling other systems in the same area, you can take some of that data with you and say, well, this is what Mary Jane up the road's making from her system. It's really good backup for the sales aid.
Awesome. Any other questions?
Good afternoon. Hi, gentlemen. Gary, hey, how's it going? I'm just wondering how much energy is actually used by the optimizers in their function?
Yeah, it's a very, very small amount. So the optimizer TS4A-AO sits there passively, not being utilized until there's a mismatch. Power, and it's 99.7% efficient.
Okay, because I was curious about it, the offsetting of that against the performance improvements.
Yeah, so just in the performance improvements, it's quite interesting because straight out of the box, NREL did some testing for us in 2014, and straight out of the box, they were able to gain an additional 3% in production because of the mismatch in the cells. Now, when you start talking about shade issue recovery, that increases quite dramatically. And in some of the testing that was done, it was up to 30% recovery. Now, I've just been through with the American team, and we looked at something like 9,000 homes across all continents to see exactly how much energy is being reclaimed in different countries. And it was interesting, Australia's actually got a higher rate of reclamation than they do in Europe, for instance. So we are going to produce some collateral material that you will be able to use to take to a customer and say, out of these homes, this is how much percentage-wise each of these people have recovered. So we've got to remember that the Tigo system will never make more power, right? It doesn't make energy, it recovers lost energy that would be bypassed. And that's where we gain the benefit from it.
Okay, no, that answers my question. Yeah, thanks, Gary. It's. I was curious. I didn't know if there was going to be overall. It seemed like a overall losses potential. But compared to the gains, but obviously not. And it's like you say, it's just it's not about making power. It's just minimizing the loss.
Yeah, and we get losses that occur over time through cell drifts in the module. So the module will always run at the lowest common denominator in the cell. So they do bin them now in the factories, and some of the better module manufacturers now are tightening that binning up. But we still get age drift, and then you'll find that you'll get one cell that's not performing quite as high as another one, and that means that module performance has dropped down. So the optimizer is actually trying to mitigate some of that and level out the current for the string. So, and then you've got things like bird droppings, leaf litter, you've got cloud cover coming over, you've got shade from people's neighbours' trees, from your own trees. Most of us have got issues with shade now. We all planted trees around now and we keep them cool in the old days. So, all that sort of affects the performance of the module. And so what we want to do is try and recover that, but we also want to stop the bypass diodes being flicked in and on and off all the time, because that can cause issues. And we want to make the life really good for the inverter if we can. So we don't want the inverter to keep racking up and down. Now, I would say, and I didn't mention it in the presentation, but if you've got an inverter brand that's got a very dynamic peak manager working in there, it's probably better to turn it off and let that function be handled by the optimizers if you're doing full deployment.
Okay, I did have another question, if that's okay.
Yeah, go for it.
Absolutely.
Okay, so I was trying to find out whether the Tigos would be of any benefit if you tried to split your string across two different aspects.
Okay, yeah.
But
Yeah, that's a very good
I
question.
mean, you guys don't really advertise it as doing that. So I was just wondering, you know, what's.
Yeah, and it comes up quite a lot now because I think most of the north-facing roofs have been used, and we're starting to see east-west or northeast or northwest being utilised. So there's a couple of considerations. And I had one the other day where a guy had 6 modules on north and 3 on west. And he wanted just to deploy the optimizers on the 3 on the west. Now, first you've got to consider the startup voltage of the inverter. There must always be enough voltage to run the inverter. But what will happen is that those 3 are going to be the weak part of the string at some point during the day. So to support the string, there's going to be some voltage clipped from the high performance side to lift the lower performance side. So that needs to be considered in the overall electrical design. Also, it's got to meet the regulations. So you're probably going to have a chat to the local certifier to make sure that he's happy with that occurring. So yeah, so there are a couple of considerations. My suggestion would always be, if you're doing mixed roofs, to do 100% deployment, because that way you get the dynamic bypass tunnel effect opening. So it's a lot better for the string, it's a lot better for the inverter, and you will definitely get more production out of your overall array.
Yeah, that makes sense. It would just be really helpful if there was some way to quantify that, and you know, the value against the the outlay.
Yeah,
which it seems quite difficult to calculate.
Yeah, I agree. I'm working on that. As I said, doing quite a lot of things at the moment, but I'm working on putting together a presentation to cover that. So yeah, just stand by, bear with me a little bit through this year. You'll have something. Yeah.
Thanks. Those are all my questions. Thanks so much.
Great. No, great questions. Thanks.
Thank you so much. Are there any other questions? I think, Gary, you covered a lot. Then I would like to say thank you for the presentation, for the good content, for the support. And I mean, you can see us here, all our sales rep, myself, etc. Get in touch with us if you need those Tigo products. If you have any questions, call us and we will help you. You will also find us on LinkedIn. As I said, please feel free to contact us anytime.
Yeah,
Gary,
Mark,
thank you.
There's a PDF of that presentation in your inbox, so if anybody wants to have that, they can just ask you for it, and that may fill in a few gaps that we've skipped over. Yeah,
we are more than happy to share it, and yeah, just contact us.
Yeah, so thanks for the opportunity, and I hope once we get through this COVID thing that we can all sit down and meet face to face at Cranch's new premises.
Absolutely. I mean, everybody's anytime welcome. We've got a little showroom. We are north of Brisbane. Please come in, say hi, ask us what is new. We've got a lot to show. We have also next week, full week program, more events coming up. Attend, and then you will be part in our raffle to win some nice prizes. Thanks to Tigo as well for the prize. So yeah, looking forward to see everyone. And then I would like to close the session for today and say thank you and see you soon.